Hiya! In today's video I'm going to show you how I went from looking like this in my living room to Freya, which means lady, and she's a Norse goddess of loads and loads of cool stuff. She has a cloak of falcon feathers and a chariot drawn by two cats. The stuff I used for this look was this dress I got from Amazon, a bunch of scraps of fur and fur collars, a blonde hairpiece to make my hair longer, some scraps of leather and belts, some jewellery and boots, and of course my trusty Sony and my remote. This piece was inspired by Lagertha from the TV show Vikings, who is a kick-ass shield maiden. So I wanted to try and get a little bit of that look with the hairstyle. Lots of the pictures that you see of Freya when you go onto Google Images are very dreamy and goddess-like, but she was the goddess of war and death, and she actually took half the souls that Odin took off the battlefield, so she's pretty kick-ass. So I wanted a little bit more of a rugged look. I've got a fan set up to the right by my constant lights. It wasn't really working, it's not a very good fan, so I had to keep flicking my dress out and my hair out and then taking the shots. I also did a few close-up shots. You can see my mean Viking face there, which I'll be using to do some other tutorials on how I retouch skin, which will be coming soon. So I started off by cutting myself out and neatening up the edges. Refined edge is great, but when you're pale on a pale background, it does tend to blur a little bit. So the first thing I did was just to mask out any other areas. Then I got my rock. I actually chose my rock first, and then I picked my stance and chose my background. I just used the patch tool there to fix the edges of the rock. Very crude, but it was a quick edit. And then just extending it a little bit so that it fitted a little bit more with the composition I wanted to go for. The background I chose, and that's the colour theme that I wanted to go for this shot. Lots of blues and grey tones. I wanted it to look a little bit stormy. So I just need to add, because I didn't get that bit of the dress on, so I just copied the other end of the dress and I've warped it so that it doesn't look like the exact same. And I'm going to neaten up the hair a little bit more. Here I'm just using the liquify tool just to neaten up some of the little bits of the dress because the sleeves were a little bit voluminous. And then I'm using an adjustment layer to match the colour of my hair. I did it quite rough because I prefer the soft edges of a brush rather than a selection. So then I just masked out the extra bits. I'm also matching my skin tone because my face and legs are different colours, so I just wanted to make them a little bit, to match them a little bit more, make them look a little bit more even. I'll put a link to it in the description box where to get this image from. It's also from Pexels. I wasn't really sure this was going to work as I was editing it, but it sort of started coming together, so I left it in. Now I'm just toning the rock to match. It was very red and sort of orangey tones, and the light was in the wrong spot. So I needed to lighten the right hand side of the rock more than the left because that's where the light is coming from on me. The rock was pretty evenly lit, so it was easy to do. If you've got too much contrast in your bits and pieces, you're not going to be able to get them to match properly. So flat lighting is almost better because then you can fake it. I've just toned the colour of the wings there to match. They were also a little bit warm, so I've just cooled them down. And now I'm toning my skin tone to match. So I'm adding a little bit of warmth into the highlights and I'm cooling down the shadows. I'm going to put a tutorial out on this of exactly how I did that. And I will use this edit as an example. So now my arm was sticking out and I was holding the remote. If I'd have been able to find a good picture of a sword, I would have put a sword in my hand, but I just couldn't seem to find anything that matched, so I thought I'd just put my arm down. little bit of toning on the bottom, neatening up the shoes, creating a shadow so it looks like I'm grounded on the rock instead of floating on it. And then just darkening down the wings, making it especially darker behind me because that's where the shadow would be. I'm just using dodge and burn for that. And then again, I'm noticing that the edges aren't great, so I'm just neatening those up. You get a little bit of a white halo sometimes when you cut something out of a background, so you want to get rid of all of that. And then again, just neatening up. You can see that faint little halo around the edge of the hair. Just getting rid of that so it looks a little bit neater. Then I'm changing the angle of the wings. So it's just Control-T, right click, and then perspective. And then you can change the angle. So now it looks, although it didn't look too out of place, once I've changed it, you can see that it looks way better. Now I'm going in with a dodge and burn, so I'm using 2 layers of curves to lighten and darken the areas to get it a little bit more even. So I'm putting some highlights in the hair. I fixed like under eye bags and a little bit unevenness on the legs. And then I'm using an action to top it all off. It's an action from Bella Kotak's Fine Art Actions. It's called Sultry Light, and as you can see, I'm just turning off one layer at a time and going through and seeing what I like, masking out what I don't like, and adding it on to my image, building it up slowly. These actions can be very harsh, but if you just break them down and go through piece by piece, you can build up a colour tone that suits your image. It's not too over the top. And then I'm just darkening that right side of the hair, left side as you're looking at it, because it would be in more shadow. And I'm also just toning that down, because once you darken something with dodge and burn, it will actually change the colour. And then I'm just doing some final highlights again with another dodge layer, just to bring out a bit of detail in the hair and on the fur collar. Last but not least, zoomed out and I noticed there was some white marks on the rock which were very distracting, so I just took those out, and a few little marks in the feathers, and that's pretty much done. So here's the before and the after for a comparison. There is a lot more to this tutorial than what's in this highlights video. If you'd like to get access to this edit as a full real-time tutorial, you can have a look at my Patreon page. The link is in the description bar down below. I'm going to be making a full tutorial of one of my edits every month, and they will also be available on my Patreon. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. Coming up next is Alice in Wonderland.